Guys, I think for the sake of time, we're going to go ahead and get started if everyone's ready. Thank you guys again for being here. I hope this sounds very loud. I apologize. My name is Casey Bradley, and I'm a Research and Extension Associate in the Forestry and Natural Resources program here at Kentucky State University. I'm really grateful to be here, not only just on this side as a volunteer moderator, but just to hear some of this great content. So excited for that. Just a couple of housekeeping before we introduce our speakers. As you guys know, our fire exits are in the back of the room. Same doors that you came in. And then also, if you need CEUs, if you're an extension agent or a pesticide applicator holder, there are CEUs available at the registration table for you guys to sign. And then, yeah, I think that's it. I'm going to let our speakers talk a little bit more about exactly what they do, but please help me welcome Brian Geier and Maggie Dungan to talk to us about farmer-led trials, how to plan, conduct, and fund on-farm research. There's a mic right.
Here we go. Okay. Most people don't know what a communications person does. I didn't know what communications people do. But basically, it just means that I help make the resources that the organization puts out to farmers, researchers, advocates. Now, I want to start this presentation with a little bit of a disclaimer, because with a title like this, How to Plan, Conduct, and Fund On-Farm Research, you might have come into this room thinking, this Brian guy is going to help me get $20,000 to do a research project on my farm this year. And I really wish that were true. But it's not. So a couple of things I want you to know from the get-go. One is that I need to look at my notes to remember. One is that this program, Farmer-Led Trials of OFRF, has an annual cycle. So it has an application cycle that opens in the fall. So projects for 2025 are being chosen right now. But the next opportunity to apply for this program is in the fall of this year for 2026. The second thing I want everybody to understand from the get-go is that this trial awards farmers $1,500 to do a small project on your farm. And I know that that's not a ton of money. But my hope here is that some of you will apply for this program in the fall of this year. My hope is also that some of you in here may do some research on your farm, and because of the resources that I can give you now, you're going to be able to do it and you're going to get better results. And third, I'm hoping that some of you in this room will get the tools that you need to collaborate either on your own or with other farmers or with researchers on a successful proposal for on-farm research into the future. But it starts with you being involved from this moment forward with an idea that you have about your farm. Now, if anybody's heard that disclaimer and needs to leave, I won't blame you. So that's where we start, with you. This statement: farmers are researchers. We may not have the expertise that professional researchers have, but anybody in here doing some farming in 2025? Got farmers in the room? A lot of us. So as farmers, I'm sure we are all engaged in trial and error processes, right? All the time. Doing new things, trying new practices. We are naturally researchers. And that's at the heart of this program and this presentation. Let me go back just for a second. Does anybody have something at the forefront of your mind, something that you're thinking about that you want to try this year to address some problem that you have, that you could tell us about in a quick sentence? It could be anything. It doesn't need to be big. Yes? Insect? Frass. F-R-A-S-S? Okay, I don't know what that is, but that's it. Bug poop. Okay, great. So hold on to that thought, and anybody else, if you've got an idea that you might want to try on your farm or trial on your farm, hold on to that thought as we go through this presentation. Okay, this is the agenda for today. I'm going to introduce this organization to you, OFRF. Had anybody heard of this organization before today? A few of you. No? Okay. There's a lot of resources that OFRF has that I want you to be familiar with, so I'm going to throw a lot at you. I may move kind of quickly. And then one of the programs we're really going to dive in with is the Farmer-Led Trials program. And we'll talk about the program, this guide that we've put together for farmers who want to do trials on their farm, and specifically the 7 steps to conducting a trial on your farm. And then there'll be a time when you all can kind of work through some of those steps by just discussing some things together, and then we'll have a farmer presentation with Maggie, who was part of the Farmer-Led Trials program during its pilot year in 2024. And then we'll have some open Q&A at the end. If anybody does have questions throughout, go ahead and just raise your hand. I'm open to that as well. But hopefully we'll have time at the end for questions too. Okay, so OFRF. The mission of this organization is to foster the widespread adoption and improvement of organic farming systems. We work remotely. We're a national organization. It's me on the bottom. See, proof. I work for OFRF. And the vision of this organization is that organic farming is the leading form of agriculture. It creates healthy and resilient people and ecosystems and economies, and it's doing that while addressing the challenges of climate change. The work of OFRF can be understood to exist in these 3 buckets: research, education, and advocacy. And I'm going to take us through each of those briefly now. Everybody should have gotten a handout, and I'll refer to that as we go. It has some QR codes to specific resources or sections of our website that I want you all to know about. So first, I want to talk about advocacy. We work to bolster and to protect federal money that supports organic farming. It's a huge part of what we do. It's led by Gordon Merrick. He's the bearded fellow in the photo on the left. And a couple of things that I want you to understand about our advocacy work, just some interesting context. The organic market is growing faster than the agricultural market is right now. Depending on what stat you look at, the portion of our food system that is organic is growing. I think it's around like 15% of produce now is organic, and something like 8% of livestock is organic. But funding for organic is only around 2%. So we work hard to try to get the support that organic needs to go where it's going. And a couple of things I want you to know about our advocacy work is that your stories about what works for you or what is challenging for you right now is one of the most potent tools that we have to do advocacy work. So there's a share your story part of our website where you can just go through a short survey and just tell us some information, and you can help us in our advocacy work that way. You don't have to talk to anybody else. But also, if you do want to take it to the next level and communicate to legislators, we've put together an interesting and cool video called Communicating with Legislators. It's also in that handout. And Gordon has taken a couple years of law school and condensed it down to about 45-minute presentation for farmers and researchers who might want to talk to your legislators. Second bucket is educational resources. So there's a few things that we have that I want everybody to know about. If you go to our website, all these things are free. They always have been free. They always will be. There's fact sheets. There's videos. We do live webinars. There's a whole page of resources in Spanish, and there's resources specifically on crop livestock integration, which I'm really excited about that last one. I wanted to tell you all a little bit more about that because it really exemplifies how OFRF operates and takes a farmer-led model. So this is the front page of one of the crop livestock integration resources we made. There's 4 of them. This one's on infrastructure for crop livestock integration. And we knew from some research that we've done, which I'll talk about here in a second, we knew that organic farmers across the country want to know more about crop livestock integration. It's a popular topic. We also knew that the #1 source of information for organic farmers is, anybody got a guess? Organic farmers, yes. We want to learn from each other. So to develop these resources, we chose a handful of farmers from across the country who are certified organic. Dang it, I keep hitting the button. That had some experience and success with crop livestock integration. And then we interviewed them. And then we looked at what they said, and we found common themes, and we developed resources about those themes. So we didn't decide to make a PDF on infrastructure and then go and do this project. We talked to the farmers first. They all told us, hey, you know, something that's really important about crop livestock integration is the infrastructure that you have. It's key. So we made a PDF about it. And just to further drive in that point, this is page 3 of that. Again, we didn't decide that infrastructure without wheels would be important for anybody. John Bitter in Florida talked about how that was crucial for them. They're 52 weeks of production a year. They got a lot of mud. They got pigs. They struggled with infrastructure, trying to move it around with wheels. And it sounds kind of backwards, but when they switched to not having wheels and could pick everything up with a tractor, it was the golden ticket for them. So again, farmer-led. I mentioned we also do live webinars. So these are called the Seeds of Success networking sessions. They involve farmers, sometimes with researchers as well. This one was on finding and navigating organic markets. So on the top left, we have Thelma Velez, who is our Research and Education Program Director from OFRF, giving some stats that we have on organic farmers and organic markets. And then we had 3 different farmers from 3 different places in the country, 3 very different scales talk about their markets. Everything from 12,000 acre grain production in Montana to 2 acres in Ohio. All women farmers on this one too. Here, I want to plug first thing that's on the handout, which is signing up for OFRF's newsletter. I'm throwing a lot at you, and I'm hoping that some of this stuff is going to be useful to a lot of you. The best way to stay in the know about all these resources and find out about these kinds of webinars is to sign up for that newsletter. It comes out once a month. You can skim it in 5 minutes and get a lot of good information. Okay. Third bucket is research. So I want to talk about a few things that we are working on research-wise, and then we'll get into the farmer-led trials. But before we do that, I want to share a little story about why I think that research is so important. Anybody recognize this guy? Larry? You recognize that guy? This is me. In about 2007, maybe 2008, I was working with Kentucky State University with Dr. Michael Bomford in the organic lab. And we were working on a SARE-funded research project looking at the use of mustards to control soil-borne diseases. And That's Dr. Michael Bomford, who works here at the upper right. The project had an on-farm component with Paul Wiedeger there on the far left. It also had a cooperator at University of Kentucky, Paul Vincelli, who I know is here at the conference. Is Paul here in the room? No, that's okay. I won't bore you with the details of the study, but I do want to tell you that at some point during this study, Mike called me into his office and said, "It's time to write the next research grant, Brian. And I don't want to decide what the topic is going to be. What do I know? I'm just a Canadian researcher. What we really need is a group of farmers in Kentucky, organic ones that can tell us what to research." So he had the idea to call together the meeting. And in 2009, here at the farm, at Third Thursday thing, at KSU here, which, you know, February was and is the organic focused Third Thursday thing. This meeting was called, and there were 9 farmers that stepped up and donated their time throughout 2009 and 2010. I just wanted to take a moment to recognize them. They were the steering committee that created the organization that became Oak. I also wanted to share this to exemplify that, to me, the importance of on-farm research really can't be overstated. And just to drive that point home, Paul Wiedeger, who has the farm that had that on-farm component of the research that I got to work on, remains a dear friend to me today. This is us fairly recently. I have inherited his wheel hoe, which is an honor that I carry with pride. We've also adopted one of his high tunnels that we actually conducted the research in. So again, the impact of research, to me, can't be overstated. All right, everybody still with me? We're going to get to the farmer-led trials part. A few things research-wise that I want you to know about that OFRF does. There's something that we call the NORA report, National Organic Research Agenda. This is research that OFRF does on you, the organic community. Organic farmers were surveyed across the country in cooperation with some regional partners, including Oak. So some of you may have filled out some surveys that went into this report, the National Organic Research Agenda. Now I want to show you a little bit of what this information looks like. If it'll go, there it goes. This is just one of the many tables that's in this report. This is basically what organic farmers said were their #1 production challenges. Controlling weeds, #1. Production costs, #2. Maintaining adequate yields, #3. But another table takes the same data and breaks it up regionally. You get slightly different results. These are ag eco regions, so Kentucky is in the south. Controlling weeds is still #1, production costs is still #2, but controlling insect pests is #3, which is a line that doesn't even show up in the Great Lakes or the Corn Belt or the Great Plains or the Pacific Northwest, which is on the next page. So I wanted to show you this because this is a way that people can point to parts of this report, and you can articulate the need for a project that you might. So if controlling insect pests is something that you want to do, you can reference this in your proposal, and the people that are going to review your proposal are going to think that you did your homework. So that's what the NORA report is for. And it's got, I don't know how many tables, but a lot. It's a big one. And there's a QR code to it there. This one I put in really big text because I'm really excited about this one. This is going to be out in the next couple of months. There is a landing page for it already, but it's not quite there yet. But this is going to be a centralized spot for all the resources that are science-based and are applicable to organic production that you can search by topic or region. People have been talking about this for years. and it's finally going to exist. We're really excited about it. It's going to look something like this, probably look a little bit fancier. I don't know why it's not playing. This is supposed to be a video, but it's not going to play. But basically, you're going to be able to search by topic and get results specific to organic farming. So it'll be the Organic Research Hub. It should be there in the next couple weeks. And if you sign up for the newsletter, we'll tell you when it's live.
Will that be offering solutions or the research, the findings or solutions?
It will be like finished publications, so like ATRA publications or like outreach publications that researchers have done. But basically anything that's relevant to organic production is going on to it.
And most of those will have it in the summer. What findings will be in the summer part of the research papers?
Yeah, and the research and the results are kind of tiled like this, so you can go through it. I really wanted to show you how it works, but it's fine. But just imagine if you typed in cucumber beetle and then typed in Kentucky, you would get all these results that are all organic, all about cucumber beetles, and applicable to Kentucky. Yes?
I was going to ask if like published research articles are also going to be in there, since those are often hard to access.
That's a great question. The question is about published research articles that are often harder to find because they're behind, like, I don't know if they're like paywalls or what they are, but they exist within this research arena that some people can't access. I'm actually not sure what the answer to that question is, but now you've got me curious. But if you follow up with me, I can find the answer for you.
Is all the research done by farmers, or is it a combination between farmers and universities and colleges?
It's basically all the research that's out there in the United States about organic is going to be on this Organic Research Hub. Should be pretty comprehensive. Another thing I just want to mention is that OFRF does outreach services for researchers. So if you're a researcher or you end up working with a researcher, we can help put together fact sheets, do webinars, and get the word out about the results. There's a lot of different ways that this can be done. These are just some examples that can be really custom to whatever project folks put together. Okay, now we're going to get to the farmer-led trials. Is there a way to know what time I'm at? It doesn't. Okay. 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 So with the farmer-led trials program, as you may know, typically research money goes to researchers, and farmers may or may not be involved in a project. This particular program, Farmer-Led Trials program, kind of flips that model, and it does give money directly to farmers. The goals here are to support farmers to do a trial on your farm that gives good results, that takes you to the next level. And the goal here is also to foster this broad community of farmer or farmer researchers to really take research to the next level, that in a way that is farmer-led. Now, I do want to also mention specifically that this is called farmer-led trials and not farmer-led research for a reason, because this is not published research, this is not peer-reviewed research, this is not necessarily professional research.
What's the difference between the two? Official versus farmer-led?
Well,
You've got a PhD to some kind of...
I'm not even sure what all the requirements are that make professional research. But to offer some clarity, this program is funded by these two entities, Farmers Advocating for Organic, which is part of Organic Valley, and the TOP program of the USDA, which is the Transition to Organic Partnership program. That's really developed for production assistance for people that are interested in organic. It's not a research program. So technically, we can't even call what we're doing research. But this is a guide that we put together to help people in the Farmer-Led Trials program, and it's also useful for anybody that's interested in research. There's a QR code for this in the handout. You have to enter in a little bit of information to access this, but if you want to pull that up during this presentation, you can, but you do not need to. But specifically, this guide goes through 7 steps of conducting research on your farm, and so I want to take us through those 7 steps now. So you can go back to that thought that you might have had at the beginning, your insect poop or whatever, and we're going to go through that. This QR code is in your handout as well. But again, you don't have to pull the report up, or the guide up if you don't want. So the first step in doing research is to come up with a good research question. A good research question is clear and it can be measured. So just as an example, we're farmers, we might have questions like this. What's the best cover crop that I can use? And what's the rate that I should use? And when should I till it into the soil to get the maximum nitrogen? Or when should I incorporate it into the soil? Those are all great questions, good farming questions, but they're not necessarily a good research question. So you could revise that and say, when's the best time to incorporate sun hemp to maximize nitrogen? That's a specific question to sun hemp, and it's got something measurable, the nitrogen. The second step would be to decide what to measure. Often that's yield, but it could be a number of other things. This is the Green Things Farm Collective, one of the farmers in the Farmer-Led Trials program in 2024, like Maggie, and they did a planting density trial, and they measured yield. Very simple, but very effective research. Step 3 would be to choose an experimental design. And in choosing an experimental design, it's helpful to review some terms. Some of you may remember this from sciencey classes you may have taken. But in field research, typically we'd have plots. Plots are just where you would do the treatment that you're doing, like spread your insect poo. That would be a treatment. And a control plot would be where you don't. And then, important thing about research is you want to reduce variance, right? Like if you just tried something one time in one spot, something happened on the south side, you might mess up your results that way. Get skewed results. You'd have variance there. So to deal with that, you can have your treatments in blocks and repeat your blocks. Typically you want to do it around 3 or 4 times or more. And you can also randomize within your blocks. So don't put A first and then B second every single time. You want to replicate it. And that is going to help reduce any kind of variance that you might have. Here's a little illustration of that. Like if you had 3 different things that you're testing on the left, you put them out there, A, B, and C, and you had a field that had higher fertility on one side because you had the turkeys there longer, then your treatment C is not going to be as good as A, right? But that's because of the turkeys, not because of what you did. So if you randomize your blocks, then that helps spread the treatments out throughout the gradient that you have, and then that variance is spread out and you'll get better results. That's why randomization is so important. These are just a few examples of different experimental design. So you could have a paired comparison where you're just comparing 2 things. You can compare 3 things in a 3 or more comparison. Like maybe you wanted to try 2 different varieties of something, or maybe you want to try 3 different varieties of something. But maybe say, Brian, I want to try 3 different varieties of something, but I also want to try mulching. Well, okay, then you got to do split plot design. So you can have your 3 treatments, but then you have 2 other treatments layered on top of it. Gets a little more complex, a little more fun. I'm going to go through the next steps later, but here I want to pause and we're going to do a little discussion activity. And I'd like you to pair up with someone. I recommend that you choose someone that maybe you don't already know. And you can choose one person to go first, and we're going to take about 6 minutes for that first person to go through these 4 questions. And you can start with your name and then go through these first 4 or however far you can get. And just kind of take that idea of something that you might want to measure and chat with it with somebody else in the room. Sound good? I'll give everybody like a minute to shuffle around and find a partner, and then I'll say the first 6 minutes is going to start.
I'll give you time cards when you would stop talking, not like the end of the session. Right? Does that make sense? So I'll give you at 25 after. I'll give you 10 minutes, and then you know you have 10 more minutes. Okay. Yeah. I don't want to think you guys I'm cutting you off like too early.
God, that was complicated.
I know it's like I keep saying in my head, and I'm like it's hard to say. Well, whenever there is questions, are you comfortable just speaking on this? If I use that, okay.
Okay, now I'm going to play gentle timekeeper and say if the first person could wrap up in the next minute, then we'll switch partners. Unless you're already doing that yourself, that's fine. And then if you have not switched, then go ahead and switch, and the second partner can take a turn going through the questions.
What did you learn?
Okay, if you could wrap up in the next minute or so, that'd be great. Okay, folks, friends, I do not like interrupting all these incredible conversations that I can see are happening. But I'm going to keep us moving, and if you want to go back to your original seats, you can. I hope that was useful, interesting, inspiring for you all. I'm going to go through the next few steps just as a little exercise here to take us to the end, and then we're going to hear from Maggie about her experience. The next step, of course, would be to decide where on your farm you would want to do this research. And a couple of things that are useful to think about are, one, the area probably needs to be taken out of production, most likely. Second, it's nice to think it's easy in the long run if you have a uniform space that you're working in, uniform field, or you just have uniformity. So for example, Jorge Reyes, who is part of the FLT with OFRF in California, he's working in this vineyard that has vines of lots of different ages. There's young ones and there's old ones. So it was really important for his research trial location to kind of be spread out because he needed vines that were all the same age. So choosing a location can be simple, or it could be a little bit more complex. Step 5 is simply doing your trial, collecting your data. So, of course, you want to think about whatever you're measuring, what you need for that, bags, markers, whatever. The general recommendation is that a schedule is really important. So just like you schedule out your field work or whatever you schedule out on your farm, you would want to schedule out the data collection so that you know to do it. Inside that farmer's guide, there are worksheets for each of these steps that you can use to kind of work through this stuff and help you think through it further. I have some hard copies of that guide too that I'll have up here if anybody wants to come and get one. It's like a 50-page so you can access it digitally, or you can come up and get a hard copy if you prefer. And then steps 6 and 7. 6 is analyzing the data, and 7 is telling the story. Analyzing your data, I'm not going to get too far into it in this. I'm not going to expect to be able to bring us all up to being statisticians. I'm not even a statistician myself. I can barely say it. But in the guide, there are some great tools, links to tools that you can use to kind of look at your data in some really interesting ways, in a way that gets better insights. And then last, step 7 is telling your story. And that can be as simple as chatting with farmer friends. If you're doing this on your own, that could also be being in contact with researchers that work in your area about what you're doing and what you're finding out. Okay, this next little part, we're going to have Maggie come up and give her experience. This is Maggie. That voice from the back is not Maggie.
Thank you, Brian. Oh, power. Okay. So I'm Maggie Dungan, and I own Salad Days Farm. It's in Woodford County, which is about half an hour from here. I've been certified organic since 2016. We grow a diversity of vegetables, herbs, transplants, value added. We have a commercial kitchen on our farm. Your typical, well, I don't want to say typical because nobody's farm is typical, but market garden style, so very intensive, year-round growing. And so, yeah, I've been in the game about 10 years, all self-taught farmer, which I don't recommend. But that kind of plays into what I want to say about choosing to do this program. I appreciate Brian's disclaimer in the beginning that you're going to make a bunch of money. No, this is more about the research on your farm and being a better farmer. It does take time. So I would not recommend it for like a beginning farmer that's just really just trying to figure out how to grow tomatoes and make money and, have a life. So I applied for the program knowing I would have the time to dedicate it to it. Not a ton of time I had to use, but I also knew that, you know, whatever the results were, it would force me to finish the whole thing. So I'll just say on my farm, KSU, UK, there's been a lot of research projects done, not led by me, but led by them. They keep asking me, and I keep saying yes. That's probably just because I'm close to Lexington and an organic farm. You could be next door listening to one I was part of about solarization and nematodes. But you're here, so I'll talk about this one. No, that's back. Sorry. So this is a picture of the actual trial. So this was my trial. When I was thinking about what do I want to do, I knew that I wanted to solarize more on my farm. So quickly, if you don't know what solarization is, it's using clear plastic and ideally putting it in very hot months of the year to heat up the soil to either kill a disease, a pest, like the nematodes they're talking about next door, or more like weeds. I care more about the weeds because that's a problem for everybody. So I knew I wanted to do solarization, especially in the high tunnels. You know, we use them year round. Chickweed's always a problem, sclerotinia is a problem. And so, hey, I'm gonna do this already. Let's do some research on it, because being an organic farmer and really caring about my soil, like those little microbes that we can't even see are very important to me. And I don't want to just kill them with all this very high heat. The soil will heat up to, 120 plus degrees, especially being in a high tunnel as well. So, if I do this, am I killing the microbes? Do they come back? Maybe they don't die at all, or maybe they never come back. So I'm a very science-based person, and I like, seeing some numbers and, not just going on faith of they're gonna come back. So that is, that's kind of why I did this trial, because I want to know for sure. So yeah, that's about me. You could read that if you want. Yeah, so we grow on less than 2 acres. And then, yeah, mostly local sales, all local sales. So, talked about the research question, and so I was very concerned that it would have a negative impact because, to me, anything at that temperature, it's gonna die. So, like I said, being part of a solarization project with UK in previous years, I saw, hey, like this made a big impact on my weeds. Even though it was about nematodes, I saw the benefits of it and wanting to use more of it, like not just in high tunnels, but also in the field as well. Because we already use black plastic, for killing crop residue and stuff like that on our farm. We're very minimal tillage. But when you do use the clear plastic, it just heats up even more. So this picture is like, if you can imagine the previous slide that talked about the blocks, of A, B, C, so very randomized. So we had 6 different plots inside this high tunnel, which is like a 30 by 96 high tunnel. So it was kind of like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So, all randomized. I'll fast forward here. So I did some preliminary research before I submitted my project. I'm like, well, how would you even measure the microbes? Send it off to a lab. Yes, you can do that, but it costs hundreds of dollars for each test. And I knew that was not feasible. So there is this, it's called a microbiometer. You can buy it. And it measures the microbes in the soil. So I was like, oh, hey, I can use this for my trial. knowing something I could do on the farm. It was economical. It would measure the things. Using that $1,500, I purchased the microbiometer and extra test kits to do all the tests. So we laid down the plastic. So we measured the soil before we put down the plastic. And then we left it on, I believe 6 weeks. Then took off the plastic, again, measured all these, or 8 blocks, sorry, not 6, 8 blocks, and then waited 2 more weeks and measured again. So that was basically this is what we're gonna do, and this is how we're gonna execute it. So not a lot of hands-on work, just basically taking soil samples and doing the little kit thing, which was not complicated at all. You could just use your phone and everything. And this is kind of the data. I did not make this graph. My statistics class was decades ago. And so this is the other thing that I'm going to talk about and really emphasize is that team of people to help you do this trial. That previous slide with all the pictures of the people on there, like I talked to almost every one of them, and they were in constant communication with me to support me in my trial, in the data collection, into aggregating it all into beautiful little handouts that you got, and that's on their website. Also, we did like a webinar that anybody could join. It's already happened. I'm sure you can find it on the web though, with all the different farmers that did the program. So yes, the support that the foundation gave to make this happen for me was very impressive, you know, just constant, hey, we're here, what can we do for you? Like all this kind of stuff to really, A, keep me on track, but B, just take this information and turn it into like, well, what does it mean? So you can see that the microbes do not go away, which is great. That's just really what I wanted to know. And that there's actually more microbes that come after the solarized. I have a few theories. I mean, I don't have an answer for this. You know, it was very dry in the high tunnel, and so being under the plastic, you know, there was moisture, and I think that helped. So that's good to know that when you use solarization, you know, you're going to increase your microbial activity. You're doing good, not harm. So the fungal to bacterial ratio, still don't even really know what that means. But that's okay because this is science and this is a measurable activity to answer my question. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
Would you consider doing it again where you measured your moisture levels? See if it's the solarization or if it's the moisture. That's the difference.
Yes, I would, but I would also then wonder if is it a different factor? You know, like there's so many factors that, you know, hey, maybe this one, you know, area got more fertility, or you know, this like there's something in the soil killing the positive mite. You know, it's very hard to measure. But yes, I mean, I have more of these kit things. I can do this all day long. Yep. Well, let's go. You're sorry.
I was just curious if you found anything, like if you just took like some different depth samples, just out of like curiosity, like something like 6 inches, maybe right at surface level.
Yeah, so I did the about 6 inches, so, you know, using a soil probe, because, you know, a theory that I had is like, you know, the microbes just kind of go deeper in the soil away from the heat. And then, you know, eventually they come back. That was like my hope, that it wasn't actually killing them, that they were just retreating. So I did 6 inches, thinking that was kind of like a middle ground of like, you know, still pretty hot, but not, you know, deep enough that it wouldn't make a difference. Yes, sir.
Kind of hard to think of
Yeah.
What would be the minimum? Would you do one bed at a time? Or what do you think would be the?
For the trial or the?
No, just if you were to do it, if I was to do this, or I'd like to do this, do one bed, I can do a quarter mile tunnel, or.
Yeah. I will say, yeah, it was hard to take the tunnel out of production. And it was also, I mean, this was part of the trial for the randomization, but it kind of was like, well, I've only solarized half my tunnel. You know, I was really kind of hoping to solarize the whole thing. But even like, you know, now that I have stuff growing in it, you can see where it was solarized and where it wasn't, based on the weed pressure and then also the sclerotinia problems. So even if you could do one section or 5 feet, I mean, that's going to have a positive impact. Yeah.
Did you witness or like observe where it was the solarization was like no longer really effective or like efficacy went down? I know that's not a big part of the trial, but yeah, just curious what your observation.
Yeah, it's not like a permanent solution. It's something you would, you know, especially what you're trying to use it for. You know, if it is a disease or soil-borne something, like it's gonna come back. You know, it's gonna find its way. And the same with weeds. You know, but for that, like the winter growing, like if we do this in the summer, the winter production in there, you know, we'll see the benefits.
Would it be safe to assume, like I use this black fabric between my rows, so would that be similar to, you know, what you're doing on solarization to kind of minimize weed pressure, brings in more heat? Do you, I know your, you know, process was more on clear plastic, but would it be fair to assume that maybe that black fabric would have a similar impact?
Yes, and so it will definitely have an impact on your weeds, you know, but fabric, you know, it is permeable, so water is getting in there. Part of the, like, thing you need to do with solarization is, like, make the edges of your plastic very tight. That's why these blue things, I call them sand snakes. There's a video on oak to show you how to make them if you want. But a lot of people will bury the edges, and that is to keep the moisture in there and keep it hot. But whether you're using landscape fabric or just like black plastic, you know, you're gonna have that effect. When people do this, ideally, it is more for the disease. Like you're not gonna kill those diseases with just the black plastic because it just doesn't get hot enough. But you will kill weeds, so.
I'm curious, I know this is not part of the trial, but like having done this, what is your farmer's spidey sense then on steaming and how that would like correlate? Like doing something.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to do steaming. It's just a very expensive investment, a piece of equipment. Although ideally it would be great for farmers to share that. So this clear plastic, however, I mean, this came from a previous high tunnel. This is like literal garbage to me, but that I could reuse on the farm.
Were you mulching your control plots with those mulch, or was it your?
It was bare soil. I kind of wish I had a picture like right before we like, you know, actually took off the plastic. This is when I laid it down because yeah, things grew despite like no water in there. Things grew where there wasn't plastic. I think there's another slide back here. Yeah, so like I said, I'm not afraid to use solarization now. I will use it much more like inside the tunnel, outside the tunnel, you know, because I have the plastic already. I think I talked about all this. I mean, just in the way that, you know, less weed pressure is going to have an impact on your yield. You know, we have a big problem with chickweed in the winter in our tunnels. And so, I mean, it's terrible right now. It's embarrassing. And certainly with the sclerotinia, you know, that is a huge problem for most people I talk to in their high tunnels. You know, it's in the soil. It's very hard to get rid of. It's going to come back, and it loves every single crop. So, and then nematodes as well. You know, I'll just talk briefly because you're missing what's happening next door. So root knot nematodes, again, soil-borne. The trial I did with UK was for tomatoes. So we did solarization in certain parts of the tunnel. Again, it was like a timed thing. Like, well, can we leave the plastic on for 4 weeks or 6 weeks? You know, what kind of difference, like, what's the minimum amount of time we have to keep the plastic down to have an impact on the nematodes? And I believe about 4 weeks plus would be the sweet spot. Because, you know, UK did all the research, then they measured for all the nematodes and stuff. But again, that was for tomatoes. Something, and root knot nematodes, if you don't know, you're lucky, but they're very hard to get rid of as well. We don't have an extreme problem on our farm with them, but they exist. How much time, sorry? Yeah. Yeah, so I practice minimal tillage, however you want to define that. I don't own a tiller. We use a power harrow and a walk-behind tractor, and it moves the soil like this instead of like this. So there's no inversion of the soil, and about the deepest I ever go is about 3 inches. So again, trying not to bring up, you know, either that soil-borne disease, the weed seeds, but I mean, it's still there. Yep.
Solarization will the seeds get wetter, it's like your chickweed.
Mm-hmm.
It's it hot enough to kill those seeds, even though they wouldn't germinate.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely I mean, I guess it's killing the seeds or the rhizome of whatever weed is already in that soil. And like I said, it's not like, oh, I'm great for 10 years now. I wish. But, you know, this is a hands-off weed solution. You know, we're not in there hand weeding or wheel hoeing. And I just, yeah. Every bit counts. Yes, sir.
It makes sense that your soil biology grew population mass in a hot area.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody who's done compost tea knows that you grow biology much faster in the summer than in the hot months. When the soil, when you have a population growing, once they run out of their available food, they actually start mining the longer and other proteins that are creating aggregate in your soil, which leads to compaction as they actually destroy the soil aggregate in order to complement digest it. So I'm wondering if you'll do a soil texture test or an aggregate test to see if solarizing might actually be causing compaction due to the mining of aggregate.
I have not thought of that, but you could definitely apply for 2026 as a farmer-led trial. So he's talking about with solarization that, you know, he's not surprised that there's more microbial growth because they like the heat and that helps them grow. However, once they run out of like food per se, they will actually eat the aggregates in your soil, and that is what would lead to compaction. You know, so when I hear you talk about that, my first initial question is like, well, how, you know, if you did solarization, you know, for 4 months, or what if you just did it 2 months, or, you know, is it okay if you just do it every 5 years, you know, or I don't know.
If I were to do the trial, I
Mm. Yeah, and you can measure the microbial activity with a microbiometer. And solving problems. Yeah.
So you'll just answer them in the podium and then I'll have the audience. Yeah. Can I get the podium and the mic on in a?
Keep going with questions, and a mic's going to go around for the recording. There's just something I wanted to mention right quick that I forgot to mention, is that in that handout there's a little section at the end about research funding and programs that are not OFRF, so SARE programs, and there is a session that SARE is doing tomorrow morning on-farm research for their programs, but I just wanted to clue you in. It seems like we got a lot of farmers in the room, that if you are thinking about the possibility of collaborating with a researcher, that OFRF does have some videos and some blog posts that have some really good things to keep in mind about just like successful farmer and researcher relationships. So those are really good things for farmers and researchers to kind of review at the beginning of a project. And more specifically, I wanted to clue you into the timeline of SARE funding proposals. They have a timeline that usually has like the application window is basically in the fall. And so like if you're wanting to partner with researchers, they're going to put those proposals in the fall, which means they're going to start working on them over the summer, which means that they're starting to think about them now. So it's never too early to reach out to researchers and start chatting about ideas and collaborating. And in fact, this is a good time.
I think we have about 5 minutes for a couple questions. And also a reminder to fill out those feedback cards, those blue cards that I gave you on your table, if you guys don't mind.
Do you have much experience designing trials that are for row crop farmers or livestock, like cattlemen using bigger acreage? Because I've just observed major challenges trying to do that kind of AB replicated blocks on with like equipment versus to bed scale.
Personally, I do not, and that's a really great question that I'd be happy to take to our team and try to find some better answers for you. I wish I had better answers for you, but I just don't have a lot of experience with research and livestock.
I mean, I would just say it doesn't matter how big the plot, or I mean, you could be like, this acre's this and this acre's this, you know.
I don't know. You know, Kentucky's hilly and then fields are wet. I just like, we had an experience with it in the past on my mother's farm where, you know, like the slope on the field and you're like trying to get some kind of randomness and you know, where your replicability is not messed up, but you're operating on a landscape scale, and then like a 16-foot disc harrow, and then trying to communicate that, like where to harrow and where to run the cattle or have access and not access. It was very complicated and didn't work with the. But you were like, well, I had to give up this high tunnel to do the research, so there's always trade-offs, and I was just curious if anybody, had experiences to kind of riff on that.
In response to your question, my recommendation would be just to lay out things like that, your plots as a tractor pass or as exactly the equivalent of like whatever you're driving or implementing. And then also same thing, I guess minimizing like the different things you're looking at if you have like both tractor operations and grazing operations in the same thing, like coordinating your paddock size and your, I guess, along with your tractor driving. But also, my question was, for applying to OFRF, do you need to be organic certified as a farmer?
For the farmer-led trials program, yes.
Any other questions?
I will say while the mic's getting over there that your inquiry about research and livestock would make a great like submit your story thing that we have. Like if you want to get in touch with OFRF and like have more of a conversation and have more thoughts, you could do that. And also, I wanted to mention that I was going through the crop livestock integration resources, and I was talking about the farmer-ledness of that. The next suite of resources that we're going to put out is how organic farmers are utilizing NRCS programs. So if you're an organic farmer and you're utilizing NRCS programs, you could submit your story there and tell us a little bit about that, and you could help us co-create the next resource and even get paid to do it.
I've scoured SARE's website for help on conducting research on setting up variables and controls, and it's either not available or it's just hard to find. Whereas the website for, is it FMRF?
OFRF.
Yes, it looks amazing. So is that organization willing to help people who aren't necessarily, I mean, just with technical advice on doing a research if they're already funded through SARE?
I mean, absolutely. We're here for farmers. We're here for organic farmers. Like, fill out that survey, get in touch. We're here for you. Absolutely.
I will say one of the resources like they provided me with, and I don't know if they just give this to everybody, but like a whole booklet, you know, spiral bound booklet of setting up your trial and things to think. And it was very helpful, like, you know, whether you go through them or not.
We have time for one last question.
This is not a question, but just pointing out, sorry, I also work for OFRF, and so just wanting to highlight that the Farmer's Guide to Research that Brian just pulled out is available for free to everybody. And so I just wanted to make sure that was clear. Like, you don't have to be part of the FLT program or be approved to be part of that program to access that guide. And it walks you through all of those things about setting up. So just really wanted to like hone that in for everybody. Go get the copy there or get it online, because it's a really great resource for setting up your trial.
I think that is going to have to wrap up most of our questions, but you guys are going to be around the rest of the day, so so find Maggie and Brian if you guys have any other questions. Thank you guys so much. And you can either leave those blue feedback cards on the table and I'll grab them, or you can find me and I'll grab them from you guys. Thank you all.